The gentle hum of the ceiling fan was the only sound breaking the stillness of my bedroom. Its wooden blades cut lazy circles through the heavy summer air, providing little relief from the July heat that had settled into every corner of my apartment. I lay sprawled across my mattress, one leg uncovered, sheets damp with perspiration. Sleep had come fitfully that night, shallow and unsatisfying. My apartment was on the 14th floor of an aging high-rise on the east side of the city. During the day, the view from my bedroom window captured the urban sprawl in panoramic detail. At night, like now, the cityscape transformed into a constellation of distant lights, twinkling against the darkness. It was usually a comforting sight. Usually, the digital alarm clock on my nightstand cast a soft red glow across the room. 2:43 a.m. The air conditioner had broken 3 days earlier, and the maintenance staff hadn't responded to my increasingly desperate requests for repairs. Summer in the city was always brutal, but this heat wave had been particularly merciless, temperatures hovering in the high 90s even after sunset. I shifted positions for what must have been the 100th time that night, my skin sticking uncomfortably to the cotton sheets. The fan overhead creaked slightly with each rotation, a rhythmic sound I'd grown accustomed to over the 2 years I'd lived here. I heard a creak. Then it stopped. Not the fan. It continued its futile battle against the stifling heat. The creaking stopped. The familiar imperfection in its rotation had suddenly corrected itself. I opened my eyes slowly, staring up at the fan's silhouette against the ceiling. After several seconds of silence, I convinced myself I was being ridiculous. Metal expands and contracts with temperature changes. The heat was playing tricks on my sleep-deprived mind. That's when I felt it, a subtle shift in air pressure. Not the sudden drop that precedes a storm, but something more localized, as if the atmosphere inside my bedroom had somehow become denser. My ears popped gently, adjusting to the change. A whisper of movement stirred the curtains at my window. At first, just a gentle flutter, easily attributable to the fan circulation. But then the fluttering increased, the thin fabric billowing inward with gathering urgency. The papers on my desk, utility bills I'd been meaning to file, a half-finished letter to my brother, began to slide across the wooden surface. I propped myself up on my elbows, suddenly more alert. The window was closed. I was certain of this because I always kept it locked, a habit formed from years of city living. Yet the curtains continued to dance, more violently now, as if caught in a strong breeze. The air temperature dropped noticeably, not the pleasant coolness of air conditioning, but an unnatural chill that raised goosebumps along my arms despite the summer heat. My breath caught in my throat as I watched a thin vapor form with each exhalation, visible evidence of the impossible cold that was filling my bedroom. What the hell? I muttered, my voice sounding strangely muffled in the altered air. As if in response to my question, the wind increased sharply. The curtains were fully extended now, straining toward the center of the room like desperate hands reaching for something. A stack of books on my shelf toppled over with a series of heavy thuds. Picture frames rattled against the wall. The bedroom door, which had been partially ajar, slammed shut with a bang that seemed to reverberate through my bones. I scrambled out of bed, my bare feet hitting the hardwood floor that now felt ice cold against my skin. The wind whipped around me, tugging at my t-shirt and boxers, ruffling my hair with fingers that felt almost solid. There was intentionality to this wind. It moved not in chaotic gusts, but in deliberate currents, circling me, assessing me. And there was that smell, subtle at first, but growing stronger. Petrichor, scent of rain on dry earth, but underneath it something else, something older and less natural, like wet stone in ancient places that have never seen sunlight. The window. I needed to check the window. I fought against the strengthening current, each step requiring conscious effort. The short distance from my bed to the window might as well have been miles. When I finally reached it, my suspicions were confirmed. The window was secured, locked tight, just as I'd left it before going to bed. Yet outside, the night was perfectly still. The trees on the street below stood motionless, not a single leaf stirring in the windless summer night. The wind inside my apartment was coming from nowhere. With trembling fingers, I double-checked the window latch, then pressed my palm against the glass. It was ice cold and vibrating slightly, as if struggling to contain something pressing from the other side. Beyond the glass, the city lights flickered, not all of them, but specific ones, blinking in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate, a code I couldn't decipher. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the wind died away. The curtains fell limp, the papers on my desk settled, and the unnatural cold began to retreat. I stood by the window, heart hammering in my chest, wondering if I had imagined the entire episode. Click. The sound was small but distinct, a mechanical switch being engaged. I turned slowly toward my bedroom door. Click. Click. More sounds followed, coming from elsewhere in the apartment. The familiar tone of my microwave being activated drifted down the hallway. The distinctive hum of my refrigerator changed pitch, cycling on and off in rapid succession. In the living room, my television emitted the staticky hiss of a channel with no signal. I hadn't touched any of these devices. I had been standing here, by the window, the entire time. "Hello," I called out, immediately regretting it. If someone had broken in, announcing my awareness of their presence was hardly the wisest move. But something told me this wasn't a burglar. No intruder could have created that wind, that cold, while leaving the window intact. I moved cautiously toward the bedroom door, fingers closing around a heavy desk lamp I could use as a weapon if necessary. The brass base was solid, reassuring in my grip. I eased the door open and peered into the darkened hallway. The pale blue light of the television screen spilled from the living room entrance, casting long shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources. I could see the silhouette of my couch, my coffee table, everything in its proper place, yet somehow wrong, as if the proportions had shifted subtly while I slept. One step into the hallway. Two, the floorboard beneath my foot creaked. A familiar sound, yet it seemed to echo longer than it should have, reverberating through the walls like a tuning fork struck against stone. In the kitchen, the microwave continued to run, though I could hear no food rotating inside it. Its digital display flickered erratically, numbers changing too quickly to read. The refrigerator's compressor switched on and off, creating a stuttering rhythm that sounded almost like speech. I reached the entrance to the living room and froze. My television was indeed on, displaying only static, but the screen wasn't the source of the blue light I had seen from the hallway. Standing in the center of the room, between the coffee table and the television stand, was a column of pale blue luminescence about 6 feet tall. It wasn't solid, more like heavy mist that had somehow been convinced to maintain a roughly cylindrical shape. It pulsed gently, expanding and contracting in time with the refrigerator's stuttering hum. I watched paralyzed as tendrils of blue mist began to extend from the main column, reaching out across my living room with deliberate, searching movements. Where they touched the arm of the couch, the edge of the coffee table, the spines of books on the shelf, frost formed in intricate crystalline patterns. My breath caught in my throat as one tendril changed direction, moving with unmistakable purpose toward where I stood in the hallway entrance. I wanted to run, to retreat to my bedroom and barricade the door, but my body refused to respond to these instincts. Instead, I stood frozen, lamp clutched uselessly in my white-knuckled grip as the glowing mist approached. It paused inches from my face, hovering there like a curious animal. Up close, I could see that the blue light wasn't uniform. Within its swirled darker currents, patterns forming and dissolving too quickly for my eye to follow. It emitted no heat, no coldness, yet standing before it felt like being submerged in deep water. A pressure against my skin, my eardrums, the surface of my eyes. All electronic devices in the apartment activated simultaneously. The television's volume surged to maximum. The overhead lights blazed on at full brightness. My stereo system screeched with feedback. The cacophony lasted precisely 3 seconds before everything went dark and silent. Everything except the blue column, which now pulsed more intensely, the rhythm accelerating like a heartbeat rising in panic or excitement. A voice emanated from the mist, Or perhaps it formed directly in my mind, bypassing my ears entirely. It wasn't a human voice. It contained too many layers, too many simultaneous tones ranging from subsonic vibrations I felt in my chest to high-pitched frequencies that made my teeth ache. "We have been watching," it said, each word sending ripples through the column of light. "For so long, we have been watching." "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my own voice sounding flat and insignificant in comparison. "We are the spaces between," it replied, "the potential in every wire, every circuit. We are what exists in the walls when all is quiet." As if to demonstrate, the blue mist began to spread, tendrils extending toward the walls of my apartment. Where they touched, the solid surfaces became transparent, revealing a complex network of glowing conduits running through the structure like veins. Not electrical wiring, something else, something that pulsed and flowed with the same blue luminescence as the entity before me. "Your dwelling sits at a junction," the voice continued, "a rare point where the barrier's thin. We have been trying to make contact for some time." The revelation hit me with physical force, subtle occurrences over the past months suddenly cohering into a pattern. The lights that flickered when no one else's did. Electronic devices activating in the middle of the night. The persistent sensation of being watched when I was alone in the apartment. "What do you want from me?" I asked, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. The blue column contracted, condensing into a more defined shape. Still not human, but roughly humanoid. A head, shoulders, the suggestion of limbs. "Recognition," it said. "Acknowledgement. Most of your kind move through their existence, never sensing the layers that exist alongside them. You are different. You have felt our presence when others would not." As it spoke, images flashed in my mind, memories that weren't mine. Vast networks of energy spanning the globe, flowing through cities like neural pathways. Entities composed of light and potential moving through these networks, observing, learning, and older memories from before electricity, before cities as I knew them, when these beings existed in different forms, as resonances in crystal formations, as patterns in flowing water, as magnetic fluctuations in stone. "Why now?" I asked. "Why tonight?" "Conditions aligned," the entity replied. "The heat, the stillness, your receptive state. We have been attempting contact for 74 of your days." The number sent a chill through me. Exactly how long I'd lived in this apartment. Every unexplained occurrence, every moment I'd attributed to an overactive imagination or to the building's aging infrastructure, had been them, trying to reach me. The blue figure extended what might have been an arm, the appendage elongating across the living room until it reached my cluttered desk in the corner. It hovered over an object I'd found in the apartment when I moved in, a small, unremarkable stone paperweight I'd nearly thrown away several times, but had inexplicably kept. "A fragment of older connections," the entity explained, answering my unspoken question. "A anchor point. There are others throughout this structure." I thought of the previous tenant, the elderly man who'd lived here for decades before passing away. The neighbors said he'd been reclusive, eccentric. Had he known? Had he communicated with them as I was doing now? What happens next? I asked, gradually becoming aware that my initial terror had faded, replaced by a deep, almost hypnotic fascination. The blue figure seemed to consider this, its form rippling with internal currents. "That is your choice," it finally responded. "We can withdraw, leave you to your conventional existence. The memory of this encounter will fade within days, becoming nothing more than a peculiar dream. Or," it paused, the blue light intensifying, "or you can learn. We can show you what exists between the world you know and the many you don't. But be warned, such knowledge changes perspectives permanently. You will never perceive your reality the same way again." The overhead lights flickered briefly, then stabilized at a low glow. Around the apartment, electronic devices reset themselves, digital clocks blinking, the refrigerator resuming its normal cycle. The sound of the city outside returned, distant traffic, the hum of air conditioners, the occasional voice calling out in the night. Normal sounds, comforting sounds. I could step back, return to bed, convince myself this had been a particularly vivid dream brought on by the heat and sleep deprivation. By morning, it would already be fading from memory, or I could step forward toward the glowing entity that had opened a door between worlds. The blue figure waited patiently, neither encouraging nor discouraging either choice. It simply existed, a luminous tear in the fabric of my understanding, revealing depths I'd never imagined beneath the surface of everyday reality. I took a deep breath and made my decision.